hi everyone. Welcome to today's panel, Creative Arts. I see there's just a couple more people trickling in. So while they are coming in, I'm gonna let you know there is a chat at the bottom. If you click on the chat, you can write us some questions. There's also Q&A, you can write them there too. And feel free to say hello and welcome our panelists. So I'll get started with introductions over here. And we've got Eric Moore from Elephant. He's the CEO there. And he'll be telling us a little bit more about what each of them will be telling us more about what they do, because they're slightly different industries, but all somehow related. And so the next step, we're going to have Gil Gastelum. Oh, sorry, I totally messed that up.
Got it.
Gastelum,
Yep.
Founder of Cosmica Artists, and Joel Camarena, Senior Manager in Global Talent Acquisitions at Sony Pictures Entertainment. You guys may have heard of that one. And then Roxana Vosogo, sorry, Membership Manager at Fowler at the UCLA School of Arts and Architecture. Welcome all of you today. Thank you so much for being a part of our panel today and showing our students a little bit about what you do and sharing with them how you got there, and just sharing a little more insight about your industry, because this could possibly be a career path for some of our students here today. So we can get straight to it. I'm going to start off with just down the line again with Eric. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you do and how you got there and the industry that you work in?
Yeah, absolutely. So really nice to meet everybody. My name is Eric Moore. I'm CEO of a creative agency called Elephant. And we work with a lot of probably brands that you know to create digital products, digital experiences, as well as advertising and branding. We work with companies like Apple, NBCU. We just launched last year Peacock, so that's a really good example of a digital product that we've designed and developed. And I took a circuitous route to what I do today. I actually went to architecture school, then worked in television and film special effects, and then found my way into creative digital industry. And that's what I've been doing for the past 20 plus years, 25 years. It's a really exciting field, and I'm excited to talk about it and that path with everybody tonight, but I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Eric. It sounds like that's going to be a great story, because that was definitely not what you thought you'd be studying for, right? So awesome, thank you. And then Gil, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Cosmica?
Sure. I'm born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've been here for now about 23 years with stints in New York and Cupertino, California. I have had a lifelong passion for music, and I thought I wanted to be a musician. And until I saw an artist while I was in college. I was on a scholarship. I was on a classical guitar scholarship, and I saw a musician perform on campus, and I was like, and this guy was just amazing on guitar, and I'm like, what am I doing? There's no way I'll ever be that good. And so I had always had a passion for knowing like who did what behind the scenes. And so I moved to Los Angeles, and eventually I was able to, through just various jobs in the industry, tour managing and working at other record labels, I was able to start my own company 17 years ago because I was managing that very same artist that I was talking about. I ended up managing him, and his name is David Garza, who just won 2 Grammys a couple months ago producing the Fiona Apple record. And so 17 years of Cosmica. We're a music management company, record label, and a publishing house. So we're, the business has changed so much over the years, but I'm super excited to be here to hopefully tell you all about it. And thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here.
That's awesome, Gil. That sounds super interesting. Can't wait to hear more, especially with those new Grammys. Congratulations. Okay, so up next, Joel, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Sony?
Yeah, sure. So I work for Sony Pictures Entertainment. I'm the senior manager of global talent acquisition, and I do a lot of hiring. I run entry-level hiring, our talent programs like our intern program, our trainee program, and then I also run diversity initiatives and just vetting different organizations and making hiring decisions for the company. I started my career with Disney. I got lucky enough to intern there in HR. I never knew what HR was, but someone told me that I could talk to people. So I listened to them and I took an HR internship, and that moved out probably about 6 years, and then moved to Sony about 5 years ago and have been there ever since. So I'm an LA native, like Gil. I grew up in the Inland Empire all around and went to San Jose State and moved to LA because I really wanted to work for Disney. I did it, and now I'm at Sony. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Roxana, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at UCLA?
Sure. I work for one of UCLA's museums on campus, which is the Fowler Museum. I help run their membership department. So we basically help fundraise for the museum through memberships, starting at, it's free for UCLA students and then up to like $100, $500, et cetera. How I came to this path, similar to Gil, I trained in classical violin and cello. And when I was around 14, 15, I had the opportunity to travel and perform in different places in the world. And that gave me the opportunity to go to a lot of museums from a young age. And I just kind of fell in love with museums. And I would before all my trips, I'd make little agendas for myself to make sure I wouldn't miss anything. And that was kind of where initially I started. My passion fell for museums, and I was like, this is what I want to do when I grow up. So in college, I went to UC Irvine. I studied art history. And from there, that kind of started my path, and went to grad school in New York and did some internships. And I'm sure we'll get into all those fun details later. It was definitely not an easy path. I think that's the beauty of working in the creative field, which we'll speak about, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming today. We're super excited to hear more about your stories. At the end of today's panel, our panelists will be, sharing with all of you students that some of the opportunities that they might have within their organization. So stay tuned for that. And Roxana already answered some of my first question. But I'm going to go back to you because I do want to keep asking you, because it is about your passion and when you discovered it, because it's just really interesting that you started off as a classical musician. So when did you want to make when you wanted to make the shift, when did you realize that this is exactly what I want to do? Because that's such a hard thing to figure out.
It's really hard. I wanted to be a lot of things. I wanted to be a musical composer for films. I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be anything creative I could think of. And then when it came down to choose a major, I wanted to study business. And my father sat me down and he said, that's silly. Don't study business. Study something that you love and that you're passionate about. Business is a skill that you will acquire, and it'll come to you no matter what. And in the work that you do. Not to say it's not a good thing to study, it's great. But in my case, I loved art history, and art history was a class I took in college, and that kind of just connected the dots. So after I'd studied art history, I was told, you have to get a PhD. That's your next step. And I was like, okay. So I didn't know. And I applied for PhDs and I didn't get in. And I applied for masters. I didn't get in. And I was like, what do I do now? And so there was a local museum. It was called the Orange County Museum of Art. And I got an internship there in public programs. So I helped kind of coordinate their programs and help get them on all the social platforms that were launching back then. And that's kind of what sparked my interest. I was in a place where you had, we had film premieres, we had art openings, we had lectures with scholars, we had, a museum shop full of books. And it was almost like my heaven. It was just like amazing to be in this kind of mecca of everything that I loved and to be able to work for that type of a place. So that became kind of that golden standard dream. And then I think it always helps to have hope and dream big. So like my big dream was one day to work at the Met Gala. So that was kind of like, how do I get there? I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but eventually, after I got my major in art history, I started I worked for free a lot. These days, most art museums and art institutions do pay for internships. But after you kind of do your internships and whatnot, I applied to grad school at NYU, and I didn't get in again, but I applied again. So I think the thing is, pursuing any career in the arts is you really have to be dedicated. You have to know that's what you want to do. I'm not sugarcoating anything, just because I think that's what I was told when I was most of all of your ages. And so it takes hard work, dedication, but once that happens, it's beautiful. And long story short, I did eventually work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I did help with the Met Gala. So, it all comes to fruition. And yeah, so sorry, did I answer the question? Or
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, I was going to ask you about the Met Gala. What did that feel like when you finally got to do that?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was just like working, we had the Vogue team, you had Anna Wintour coming through the offices, and they were filming documentaries about it at the time, which you can watch. I think it's called The First Monday, First something May, and oh my goodness, I will get the name for you. But, it was just very surreal. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about achieving your dreams, because it happens and then you're like, what's next? So I think any advice I would give is obviously live in the present, enjoy that moment that you've worked so hard for. But obviously it is about the journey. It is about this path. You'll always be working hard. And that's kind of, I think, the beautiful part about it. So enjoy where you're at right now, because it's just going to continue.
Oh, thank you, Roxana. So Joelle, could you tell us a little bit about when you realized that you wanted to go into your field? I know you said earlier that you were going after Disney, but maybe your specific career, or was it just the industry that you were attracted to? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I went to school for international business. Like my dad, I think he wanted me to go in that direction, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work, and I like a 9-to-6 type job, so I knew I liked structure. So I knew I would end up in a company where I would clock in and clock out and work at a computer all day. So I didn't necessarily know. I started to, after graduation, started researching all over and seeing what it was. And like every recent graduate who does business, everybody thinks you're supposed to do marketing because it's fun. And if you're not analytical, then you're not going to be finance. And, if you're not tech, then you're not going to go in a data role. So everybody does marketing, but there's so many other jobs out there. So I started applying to all these different marketing jobs, and I love toys. So I have like toys all over my desk, and I really wanted to work for Disney Consumer Products because I thought it was so exciting. I still go into Target and I go walk through all the toy aisles. I like to see how they're formed. And so I really wanted this internship at Disney that was in licensing. Basically, they license toys to the people who actually make them. Disney doesn't make them. So I really wanted to do that. But when I interviewed, I got hit with, you don't have relevant experience, which everybody gets hit with. It's a normal thing. But during the call, somebody said, you should think about an open internship on my team in HR. And if anybody's going to give you a job or give you a chance, I didn't care. I just went for it. And turns out that I'm really good in HR and makes sense. And I'm really good at hiring people. So I'm fine with it. I tried to go back to my dream, I think probably a year into being in HR. I was trying to see if I could move over internally, and I still got hit with, you don't have relevant experience. You're going to have to, be a temp to gain it. And I thought, I'm really excelling in HR and I'm making good money already. So I should probably just stay doing this. And I can go walk Target or buy all the toys I want with the money that I have. So I'm happy.
That's really cool. And hopefully you'll be hiring a lot of our students too. Thank you so much, Jill. Gil, can you tell us a little bit about how you discovered your passion? I mean, I feel like music is so awesome that it was probably really natural to you, but just tell us a little bit about how you came to
Sure.
build your own company.
Yeah, well, sure. It was always, it was always a big part of growing up in my household. My dad is an amateur musician, and my mom was always playing the AM radio back when the AM radio was playing music. And so it was always a big part of my life, and it was just made a big impression on me. I think the first time I realized that I wanted to get into the music industry rather than being a musician was, of all things, I was going to in Tucson, premiere of the Tim Burton film Batman, and there was the street team marketing people handing out flyers for merch for Batman. And so I took one and I was looking at the brochure, and it had different interns from Warner Music, for Warner Records, wearing the type of merch that you can buy for Batman. And one of them said, the person's name, and that he was an intern for a still relevant executive in the music industry to this day, Benny Medina, who Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was modeled after. He's J-Lo's manager these days. And I was just like, oh, wait a minute. I was able to kind of put that together. And I was like, you know what? I always do read. I used to read the liner notes when those were more prevalent, when you would buy a cassette or a CD. And I had a penchant for knowing who did what for each act that I bought a record for. So I went, and while I was in college, I got a job at a record store. And I slowly but surely started making contacts at the record labels, because they would call the record shop soliciting, like, hey, you should buy more of this Vanilla Ice record, and um, and so eventually I was just like, you know what, I'm going to make the move to LA. And I ended up starting from like sub-zero. I was a tour manager. I was an intern at a record label. I was only supposed to go there once a week. I was going there every day before I worked at another record store in LA. And so I just kind of immersed myself and got to know enough people that I was able to sort of like maneuver and pivot back then as you could. And I ended up getting a product manager job, working myself up to be a product manager at A&M Records. And I worked with artists such as Sheryl Crow, Soundgarden, and Jim Blossoms. And then and then from there, I just not too far after, I started my own company, because I realized that I wanted to work with acts that I personally really wanted to work with. And it was really hard to do that at a record label. They didn't take me serious as somebody that could potentially be what you would call an A&R person, somebody that brings the content to the label. They didn't take me very serious about that. So eventually people thought I was crazy, but I left. I went independent, and I never looked back. I've never gone back to work for a major label or a corporation since. And that was circa 96. Somewhere around there, yeah, 96. And so I've had my own company since 2004, and it just kind of what ended up happening. And hopefully, I'm not going too long here. So the artist David Garza, who I'm still manage, he was signed to a big label at the time. After 9/11, things kind of went at a standstill. He ended up getting dropped the day after his record came out, or the day after his record was named #2 album of the year in the New York Times. And we're like, we're back in business. And the next day he got dropped. And so back then you had to, talk to labels, try to get them to go and see him perform and see if they wanted to sign him. And so what would happen is they'd see him, say, he's great, but they'd see his name, they'd see what he looked like, and they say, you should talk to our Latin division. And so to some of these A&R guys' credit, they would set up meetings with the Latin division, and we'd go and talk to the Latin division, and they'd be like, what is this? He doesn't sing in Spanish. So it was kind of like being in a rock and a hard place. And so finally, David just told me, he's like, look, I'm not going to sign with any of these labels, and they don't want me, obviously. Only way I'm going to put out more music is you start your label. And so that's how I started Cosmica. So
Wow, that's an amazing story. That's really cool.
all right, that was very long-winded.
No, that was really cool. So then I'm going to go back to Eric, because you mentioned that your major was so not what you're doing right now. And I'd love to hear about how you made that leap. And then, of course, when you realized that, you know, advertising was your thing and you were passionate about it.
Yeah, well, a few of the things that Roxana mentioned kind of resonated with me because I had an idea of what I was going to do, which was architecture, and I went to design school, and I loved the study of architecture and design. But when I got my first architecture job, I hated it. And I think it's a good lesson that, number one, you don't have to know what you want to do. I think sometimes we feel the pressure, especially when we're younger, that we need to sort of know what we're going to do, stay in that lane. And I think, you know, some of the serendipity that Roxana was talking about, that Joel was talking about, where you think you're going to do one thing, but you get an opportunity to do something else, and you follow those interests. And I think sometimes, you know, I think it's really important to follow your passions, but you may not know what those passions are yet. And I think if you just follow what you're interested in, and I think that's what happened to me. I mean, I'm thinking about it now, you know, retrospectively, but I think I just followed my interests, and if something piqued my interest, then I went after it, raised my hand, went after the opportunity. And I think that's the way I found my sort of path and ended up doing what I'm doing now, which is really, at the end of the day, you know, solving business problems with creativity. And it all makes sense now, because if I learned one thing in design school, it was how to solve problems. And you can apply that in so many different ways. So, you know, through a couple of really serendipitous opportunities, I got into this field, and it was that epiphany where I realized I'm kind of good at this and I like it. Kind of what you were saying, Joel, where you just kind of realize this feels natural to me, and then that feeling of being productive, of feeling that what you're doing is rewarding and making a difference and making an impact, just really, you know, inspires you further. And so anyway, long story short, I would follow your interests, because not all of us know exactly what we want to do, and we might think we do. And it's okay if you discover that there's, you know, that thing you thought you were going to do is not necessarily the thing that you'll spend your life doing. Don't get discouraged, you know, enjoy the journey, like Roxana was saying.
Can I touch on what Eric said real quick?
Oh, please do. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like with students, and when you're in school, especially the generation, the one that I grew up with, it's like, do something you're passionate about. And I feel like that's so much pressure, because I don't necessarily know what I'm passionate about, nor do I have that feeling like somebody else does, that I really want to be an actor, I really want to do this. I just had overall interests. And I think your passion, like I like to DJ, you know, so I do that on the side, and I do weddings and fun things. And maybe that's what I'm passionate about. But if you realize that you're a kind of person that does well with a lot of structure, you know, like HR, I wouldn't say is my passion, but it's what I'm meant to do, and I really enjoy it. So you don't always have to do your passion, you know, and you may not even know what that is. I don't even know if I have a passion. Yeah, maybe helping people. I don't know.
Yeah, if I can just comment on that, absolutely. I think one piece of practical advice I wish I would have followed myself when I was in college is, like, understand what kind of structure you like. Do you like going into an office? Do you like having that set of structure? Do you like kind of being on location, going from point A to point B, actually, you know, going out of your comfort zone, et cetera? That will really help, you know, determine what kind of a position that you should go down, especially in the creative field, if that's what you're looking to do. I know when I graduated college, I had a difficult time actually finding any job. So I started my own like magazine, and it sounds daunting, but it was kind of simple. It was basically, I called up some friends. I was like, hey guys, like, can you write about like an art exhibit or a concert where you are? And they all did. And they, submitted different pieces to me. We put it online, and that was that. And like, so the beauty of it is, it's like, if you enjoy doing something, just do it. I think that's the, point blank answer. I have a friend recently, he was super into gaming. He did a whole gaming podcast. Then he created a product, which he's now sold, and it's doing really well. But again, he just went down something that he loved and enjoyed. So, but you don't always have to do that. Like Joel said, definitely not. At the end of the day, a job is a job. No matter if you're in the field of your passion or doing something you don't like, there's certain operational things that you have to do. So see what fits with your lifestyle and try different things out, I would say.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in, everyone. And Joel, that was such a good point, and everyone too. It's just, what you're studying right now, one day you might try it out and say, I'm gonna, use this horrible word, pivot to this other thing because this is actually what I'm interested in doing. So then my next question I wanted to ask you guys is about, I'm going to make it two-part. I'm going to combine it. It's about mentors and networking, because I know not everybody has maybe had a mentor in their career, but maybe you were influenced by your network. So Roxana, since you're up, I'm going to start with you again.
Yeah. Actually, how I have my current job is through a mentor. And it's a funny story. I met this mentor about 10 years ago. I was out of one of my first jobs in college, and she walked in with a group of art museum professionals, and I simply asked her about the group, and she mentioned she worked at LACMA, and I was like, oh, that sounds great. Could we have a coffee one day? I want to learn more about what you do. And at that point, we just kept in touch throughout the years, and having a mentor, it sounds so intimidating, but really all it means, it's like literally just reaching out to someone saying, I think you're cool. I like what you do. I want to learn more about it. And if you guys connect, just like you connect with a friend, then you keep them in the loop. That's all it is. Like every couple months, just send an email being like, hi, I just received this cool internship, or, I'm thinking about doing this now. Just keeping them up to date, is really helpful. And how I got my job, 3 years ago to this day was, I reached out to that same mentor and I said, hey, would you like to grab a coffee? And whenever I would do that, I always just hop online and be like, oh, looks like they're hiring. And I noticed she was hiring. And so I was just like, oh, I might be a good fit for this job. And she's like, really? Are you sure? And I was like, yeah. So that coffee turned into a job interview, which then, fast forward, I got the job eventually. But it's how, so sometimes it's funny, like I say, it took me 10 years to get the job that I have now because of that, maintaining that existing relationship. And yeah, and it's good to go to people that you haven't met, that you want their jobs, or anyone of us on this panel, or even family, friends, they can always connect you to, or yeah, that's my story.
You never know.
Never
Never to everybody. So Eric, can you tell us if you had any similar situations along your path?
Yeah, I think if I probably had a few different mentors, and they were really simply people I wanted to learn from. It wasn't, and not all of them were necessarily older than me or had a ton more experience, but they had something and knew something, or knew how to do something, or I saw them in action and I found it really inspiring and wanted to learn that too, or acquire those skills too. And they made a big impact. And I can think of the two or three that really made an impact on how I am as both a professional, but also what I bring to what I do professionally, also from my personal life and who I am as a person. And that's definitely been very impactful in my growth, in my career growth.
Great, thank you. Joelle, what about you? Anybody in your network or mentor that you had that helped you because you seem to really have it hit the nail on the head there with the find your passion, but then find a job that you can do with your passion.
Yeah, I guess I've never really had an actual per se mentor. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on that word, and people feel like they have to go out on LinkedIn and find somebody that they like and, you know, make them talk to them. I just feel like it's a lot, especially now everybody brings up mentoring so much, and it's so much more organic and natural. And I don't necessarily look at it as like I have a mentor. I've always liked people older than me. So I've always hung out with, I would say, people who maybe 15, 10 years older than me. I think maybe that helped. It's because I know I'm HR because I love to ask people about how they got to where they are, or what choices they made, like what did they think they did wrong. And I felt by asking those questions to people and just listening to them, I was able to kind of take a little piece of that and make decisions for myself. So if you don't feel like you're a person who, you know, wants to connect with just one person and be friends with them for 20 years, if you feel like you're a crazy soul like me that likes to talk to 20 different people all the time, then that may be for you too. You know, just assess whatever you like as a person and what you want to do. There's not one way that fits all.
That's so true. And Gil, I'm going to go back to you as well. I know, you know, you mentioned David had a big role in your career, but maybe just going a little further back and when you were like, you know, working for other companies, how did you, it's so hard to break into them to begin with. Like, how did you get to that point? Did you have a mentor or did your network? How did that help out?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty tough. I mean, I originally came in to live to LA not having a job. As far I was able to get a job at a record shop again, but that certainly was not where I wanted to be. So what ended up happening is I would befriend all of the what they would call merch reps from the labels that would come and put up posters and whatnot to advertise the latest release. And I would talk to every one of them that would come into the store, and some of them didn't want anything to do with me, and some of them were at least cordial to me. I mean, this is a business that, you know, can be pretty tough, especially if you don't already have connections, and which I didn't have enough of to parlay that into something at the time. But I did have somebody that probably took pity on me in the beginning and said, "Hey, you know what? We need help at the record label he worked at the time, MCA Records, which is now Universal. You know, we need an intern. So, you know, we need somebody to come in once a week to box up stuff and mail it out and do calls to the record shops." And I'm like, absolutely, I'll do that. And then so what ended up happening is I would go, as I said earlier, I would go every day and I befriended everybody that was at the record label. And I would just I would end up just coming in and just say, "What do you need done today?" And so these folks, slowly but surely, who were like super busy and didn't really have time for me over the course of the year and a half I was there, had opened up to me. And what ended up happening is somebody said, "Hey, A&M Records is hiring. My friend is in HR, and I want to get you an interview because you need to be working at a label now at this time. It's like, it's ridiculous you're still interning." And so that's how that turned into. And then later on, as I maneuvered within the industry, I have one in particular that has been just an amazing mentor for me for many, many years. He used to run Madonna's record label and management company. His name is Fred Corshell, and I owe a lot to him. He hired me for his company as well. I was able to work, because of him, I was able to work with legendary people like Smokey Robinson and Jackson Brown. And so we're still close to this day. And it's, so I owe a lot to him as well. But that came a lot later. But, you know, back then it was tough. It was tough because that industry, you know, a lot of people
Cutthroat.
come in already with like a silver spoon kind of, you know, they've got somebody that's already in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many industries that feel like they're that way. So it's so important to really hang in there. And like I said, be nice to everybody. Well, Gil, maybe you can help me out answering the next question. I'm also going to make it two-part. So what advice do you wish you would have known back then that you could give to our students today? And then of course, what can they do now in college to help prepare for a career in your field?
Right, right. So I wish I would have realized how much stuff was going to change. Technology, consumer habits, as far as like how you digest music. Back then it was so easy. It was like you sell your CDs and then you're good. The biggest problem we had back then was like people buying used CDs. And now it's just like, it's a bigger part of the puzzle. So I would have liked to have told myself, it's like, be ready to pivot. Be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. And so because change is hard for me sometimes. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to do this, but like you really have to make sometimes a split-second decision. And so for that, I would have given myself a little bit more advanced notice. We like to use that in the industry a lot. It's like, oh my God, you're coming to me with this now. I would have liked to have had advanced notice. So I would have given myself advanced notice, and then as far as things to do to get into the industry, I would start early. I would take advantage of like whatever university you're going to. And in the past, I was a recruiter for the University of Arizona, my alma mater. So I would meet a lot of kids out here in Southern California that wanted to go to school, and they wanted to get into entertainment. It's like, you got to do it now. You have to get a pertinent internship in the summer. It's absolutely, and do exactly kind of, and it probably better than I did, but, make those connections, because that is just, it's not what you know, really, it's who you know a lot of times,
Yep.
and then later on you get to show them what you know.
Yeah.
But that beginning part, it's you really do need to like make those connections. It's so important. So those internships, working at a record shop, I can't imagine me being able to get into the industry at all had I not been in the working at a record shop that was pertinent at the time. Of course, they don't hardly exist any longer, but so yeah, that's
cool.
what I would recommend. Just get to know people.
Yep.
I know that's a lot of it can be outside a lot of people's comfort zones, but you got to do it.
Yep. And hopefully we'll talk about some of those internships in just a bit. Joel, can you tell us if you have any advice for someone starting out in a career in your field?
Yeah, so entertainment's very difficult to get into. I think everybody applies. An internship can be like 500 to 1,000 applicants for one of them, especially a summer internship. Start to look at the easier route of going in. So I don't know if you guys on LinkedIn noticed, but the spring and the fall, like if you're local to LA, there's so many opportunities to intern, and there's not enough people applying to them because everybody waits for summer because they don't want to do the internship during school. So, all these different companies, NBC, Universal, Paramount, Disney, they're all posting on LinkedIn, the deadlines. Research those intern deadlines for the seasons that aren't as popular. You can't compete during summer. I mean, it's just the amount of high-level referrals that a studio gets from executives who have kids and their friends. It's so much. And so try and get in at different areas and try and go smaller. Everybody wants to go, Netflix, Disney, like the top dogs. Go smaller. There's so many other smaller companies that you need to go in. Like if you guys are interested in film, like Montecito Pictures has one of the best intern programs, and they take people with no experience and they sit on the Sony Pictures lot. So you got to go smaller, and get those ones that are low paying, or a lot of them are unpaid or school credit. Like don't always go for the top dog, because you'll get there as you gain more experience, but you're not going to get it your first time out. And you're just going to get discouraged if you continue to apply and you're like, nobody's calling me. It's because you're competing with USC students who intern every single season because their school tells them to, and because they usually have parents that help them and they don't have to work.
Okay,
that's an overgeneralization, but
no, but that was great advice. I hope you guys all wrote down Montecito.
Pictures.
Yeah, Montecito Pictures. There you go. Eric, well, what about you? Any advice you could give?
Yeah, I would just, stay open, stay busy, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to have all the answers about what you're going to do in your career. A lot of what we were talking about early. Yeah.
Roxana, anything you want to add to that before we get into the internships?
Yeah, I would just say, just like kind of like what Gil said, is talk to people and take this opportunity because you're in college, and reach out to people that you're interested in learning more about what they do via information interviews. That's a lot of what I did in college, and people were super receptive to it. Some people were not. And just because someone doesn't email you back or message you back doesn't mean they don't want to. I think I got a little discouraged, once I got an email back 6 months later from a music executive saying, sorry, I was so busy, like I can talk now if you want, so just be patient with that process, but also use this time to your advantage. People, we're all here, we're all speaking to you, and I can say it's my pleasure to do it. I think we're all excited, so like take advantage of this time to ask people about what they do, because if you don't now, it's going to get harder later, because then after you graduate, people get a little suspicious. Like, why are they asking me so many questions about my job? Whereas you're a student right now, people will give a lot of information they wouldn't otherwise. So.
Awesome, thank you. And then, okay, we're gonna do a flash lightning round of announcements and internship opportunities, because I know you guys are now that you know this is how you get in. Here's the opportunities that are up next. Eric, I'll start with you.
Great. So we do, as many companies do, summer internships. And we actually, last year, along with our sort of forming partnership with Fulfillment Fund, we designated one of those for a Fulfillment Fund participant. She was amazing. I think she had a really great experience, and we did as well. Next summer, we're going to increase that to 2, so 2 spots for Fulfillment Fund students. And we're also looking to do 1 during the winter. And that'll probably be, depending on the interest of the candidates, we usually align them with different disciplines, but we're excited to try that out as well in the winter. So that would be like in the beginning of 2022.
Amazing. Gil, what about you? Any opportunities at Cosmica?
Absolutely. So we're always looking for interns. We usually go pretty heavy during the summertime, but we're always in need of 1 or 2 interns, at pretty much any given time. So make sure you guys get in contact, send your, if you don't have a resume, it's just nice to get a nice email from somebody, and we could do a Zoom interview. And but yeah, we're always in need of interns, so please, we usually try to have 2 on staff to help my employees.
That's
So
awesome.
absolutely.
Joel, did you have any announcements or just rolling?
Yeah. So Sony Pictures has internships spring, summer, fall. At this time, we don't have any for the spring, which is the January timeframe, just due to what's going on. But we'll launch pretty big for summer 2022. So you can check out all of our internships at sonypicturesjobs.com. We have internships all over. We usually hire anywhere from probably 75 to 125 interns. We also have awesome trainee opportunities, which are for recent graduates, and they're 6 months long. Or interns can turn into trainees also. So we will definitely have those. You can sign up for job alerts on our website and get them directly to your email when they actually get posted.
Awesome. Thank you. Roxana?
Yeah, so over at the Fowler, we do have work study positions available, because I saw some UCLA students here. So feel free to check up on our website and UCLA jobs. And if any of you are interested in any jobs in the arts, whether it's galleries, auction houses, museums, even in the NFT space, feel free to reach out to me, and I can help connect you and put you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists for being here. You guys were so insightful and wonderful. And I hope students took lots of notes because these are some great opportunities coming your way. And a special thank you to Elephant for being today's session sponsor. Thanks, everybody.